you say?
When the sunrise comes falling, when the midnight comes calling.
Yo, what's good, everybody? It's your host, James Meeks, and we're back for another episode of your favorite Black Fatherhood podcast.
Yes, sir. And what's good, everybody? It's your co-host, Jesse Alex, also the co-founder of Dear Fathers, the premier media platform for Black fatherhood. Thanks for tapping in.
Before we get into this dope conversation today, I need y'all to go and subscribe and follow us anywhere you get your podcast today. Jesse, let's dive right in, bro. All right, yo, welcome back to another episode of the Dear Fathers podcast. I'm your host, James Meeks. We're excited about another impactful conversation with today's guest. But before we get started, Jesse, my boy, how you feeling today?
Man, I'm good. As always, I'm excited. Talk to another Black father, man. As you know, James, I'm a big sports guy, so are you. So this guest, man, I'm hoping I'm knowing it'll be a great, fun conversation, man. So I'm good today.
Definitely, man. I'm excited about this one too, man. So to get into it, we'd like to welcome former NFL 9-year vet, current ESPN analyst, one of our favorite analysts. He can be seen weekdays on NFL Live, and a super dope father, Marcus Spears. Welcome to the Dear Fathers podcast. How you feeling today, brother?
I'm good, man. Thank y'all for having me. It was a good late wake up today, so that's a bet. I took a day off the screen to hang out with my people, so I appreciate y'all having me.
And that's dope, man. We used to seeing you up early, man, on Get Up and all them other shows too. So I know it'd be killing you having to get up the crack of dawn to get on and talk, man.
Absolutely.
Well, good, man. We our platform is really about, highlighting Black fathers and some of the things that we go through, and some of the experiences, because we want to change the narrative in terms of how people view and see us. And so when we get a chance to have conversations with men as yourself, a lot of times people want to talk to you about like your sports career and things like that. And we're interested in that. Like, that's really what drew us to you, but we're more interested in getting to know you as a man. And hopefully from the end of this conversation, our guests get a better sense of who you are as a father, who Marcus is as a man. So, but time to taking it back. Let's go back to where it all started, man. We know you're from the South, from Louisiana. So talk to us about your family, your parents, and what was your relationship like with your father?
Yeah, listen, man. It was growing up in Baton Rouge. Obviously, it was tough. It was a rough place to grow up. My mom and dad separated when I was 8, but both of them were very integral in my life. Both of them worked together and managed and facilitated between myself and my sister, just to be both of our parents, whatever their differences, whatever their issues were. I think they did a phenomenal job. I got to give my mom a ton of credit for always keeping my mind on relationship with your father, right? Like, don't let our current situation determine how you all move throughout your life, his life, and just form a relationship, right? When you're not living in the same house with your dad, it's not going to be as strong as it should be. But it was strong. And then too, man, growing up in South Baton Rouge and North Baton Rouge, living all over, we were chasing them rentals because of financial situations. Yep. It gave me a perspective of family, because the one thing that I moved with my dad at high school, but between me, my mom, and my sister, man, we just grinded. We were together. My mom was working. My sister became my mom. My grandmother became my mom. So it really was a community for me. My childhood didn't lack one bit. All of my family was involved. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't have our issues.
Right.
Doesn't mean I didn't have my issues with my father either. But I think, man, just generational wise and the things that I was able to see. And this is the thing I explain to a lot of people all the time. My experiences allowed me to be more forgiving to my father. And I didn't hold grudges because of absence at times. Because I had other people to facilitate that. I knew the value in that because my mom stressed it. And it really wasn't, until I got older and realized the impact of not having the everyday lessons. Yeah. It really didn't affect me, man. I was hooping, playing football. So y'all know how childhood is, man. When you got sports, you got friends, a lot of stuff get filtered out that you deal with.
Yeah, even one thing I want to touch on that you mentioned that is super important, like you said, because you hear different stories when it comes to this. is your mom, right? Your mom was an advocate for you building a relationship with your dad. And a lot of times I hear stories, you know, where moms are like, you don't need a dad. What you need a dad for? I'm the mom and the dad and all this stuff. So just want to give your mom roses for that regard, because, you know, sometimes you don't hear stories like that where the mom actually is pushing you to have a relationship with your father. And even to that point, like we talked about before we started recording, I grew up without my dad, and I didn't realize how it impacted me until I became an older adult. But you said something right there that I never even thought about. I was playing sports. I had friends. Like, I'm outside running around. I'm not thinking about like not having a dad. I'm really just living my life. You know? The whole year I'm playing, you know, AAU basketball, the season, all that stuff I'm not really thinking about. So that's something that you know, brought to my attention, is like, I was just kind of being a kid, living life. I was like thinking about it at the time. So that's dope though, that your mom kind of pushed you to have that relationship with your dad.
Yeah, she did, man. And I think she grew up with 7 brothers and sisters, and her mom and dad was married 55 years. Ooh. So she understood the value of not only the family dynamic, but the male role to the son. You know, I think she had 4 brothers, and all of them graduate college. All of them have successful lives. And my grandfather was a farmer. Like, you know, so his sacrifice and all of that, my mom was able to see. And then she saw how that manifested into her brothers and their work ethic and the things that were translated. So I think she always in her mind, like, you know, it's funny, man, when we get married, we got this picture. We got this like idea of how the family gonna be. We're gonna have these good times and vacations, and we're gonna be married for 70 years, and our kids gonna get married and bring their kids. But when it didn't flow that way for my mom, she never forgot the value of what it was like to have her dad in her life, her father. So I think that is the foundation of where she was coming from, as far as keeping our lines of communication open with my father, even though I wasn't in the house with him every day. And look, my dad was a G, bro. Like, he wasn't no deadbeat, right? Like, it was things my dad didn't know, like you saying, because him and his father didn't have the word together. So as I got older, I started to understand like the ramifications of not having that relationship.
Well, then you mentioned your mom having a big family, and, you know, with your dad being, you know, active, but he couldn't be present at all times because you didn't live with him, you lived with your mother. How did your mom's family impact your upbringing? Like, did you have uncles that, you know, would kind of fill the gaps when your pops wasn't around for you?
Yeah, man, absolutely. My Uncle D, my mom's brother, was my mentor, taught me a lot. He was big in real estate development, lived in California. And just had like this. My Uncle D gave me vision. Like, the one piece of advice he gave me that I'll never forget: favor is better than money. He would tell me that all the time, and I could not, for the life of me, grasp that, because I was poor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, I need this bread, man. Like, the money is what get mom the house, it get her out the neighborhood, it get her, you know. But he was teaching me the long game lesson, right? Like, treat people the right way, always be accountable, be present, and then you gain favor. And then the favor is when people start speaking about you positively in other circles, where when you show up, somebody has already preceded you, and people are gravitating, and they willing to deal or work with you. So he was that, stood in the gap with those lessons, man. And then, you know, he did well financially for what we thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, he had his own house, he was paying his bills, he had a car, he was living and thriving. And I just saw that, and I was like, man, this is ultimately, I guess, what the American dream looks like for a Black family. You know what I'm saying? So he was instrumental. My uncle Trent Jr. is the youngest brother in the family, and he was the guy that cultivated my work ethic. When my grandfather got older, and he had this fencing company, we used to dig fence post holes, man, with these drivers. And I'd be sick to my stomach every morning, waking up 5 o'clock. Now this is South Louisiana, bro. It's 90 degrees at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we out there grinding. And at the time, he would tell me all the time, just keep working, just keep working, keep working. He used to tell me, keep on running, just keep on running. And, at that time, you're like, man, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to die if I keep doing this. But all of those lessons in a town called Colfax, Louisiana, my grandfather managed through his whole life to buy 49 acres legitimately for his family. And we worked that land growing up. We fished on it. We hunted on it. But my uncle Trent Jr., man, taught me how to work. I tell people that all the time. And that translated into everything. Football, basketball, school, just keep on working. That was my whole thought process growing up.
Yeah, that's dope, man. And even that you can kind of, put two and two together. It's like, hey, this is where this came from. That's part of the thing with me, man. Sometimes I wonder, not knowing, my dad or what he's like. It's like, what parts of me did I get from him? You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know that, and it kind of wrecks my brain sometimes, but it's like, I'm pretty sure there's some things that I got from him, whether it be good or bad, that make me the man that I am today, that I'm still, working on being better. So that's super dope. And
but man, I know y'all brought me on the podcast, asked me questions, but I got a little experience in what you just said, man. Like those intimate thoughts that you have, those things that you like, we all have them as humans, but those things that you question about why I'm feeling that way, that's probably your pops, right? Like if you have that experience with your mom or whoever raised you, those qualities.
Yeah, right.
Those ones the ones you can't identify with. Because I went through it. A lot of people think just because my father was absent, him not being in the home every day with me, still left me with questions.
Yeah.
Like it still left me with, even though at times I could go 20 minutes down the road and be like, I'm feeling like this. Is this something you're familiar with?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that because I didn't understand the feelings. Like I was like, this just me. This how I'm dealing with it,
right.
So I would tell you, man, just really like those intimate thoughts that you have, those things that you question when certain situations arise and you respond a certain way, and you, instead of saying that's out of character, like we say all the time, sometimes that's just a part of who you are. Yeah. And I had to check that about my father, man, because my mom was a real giving, nurturing type person. Like not just a mom, a person. My dad is more of, when I get this paycheck, I gotta hold on to it. He was always preparing for things that may come in a negative way. So I got that, I got both of them, but thank goodness I got more of my mom. I'm more of a free giver.
Nah, that's dope, man. And even just to, bring up, your football career, let's take it back to 2005, drafted first round in the NFL, man. Tell us about some of your favorite moments or what that was like just being drafted.
Yeah, man, listen, it was it was about my family. Like I know a lot of dudes get up there and they, I was happy, don't get me wrong. When 20th in the first round, it was the Cowboys. I grew up in Louisiana, a lot of Cowboy fans. So I was lit now. I was geeked up about going. But man, just to see every professional athlete, I think, that comes from the type of backgrounds a lot of us come from, Black men in this country, the relief of my mom is what like sticks out in my mind. Like I had to raise, in my mind, this is how I thought she thought about it. I had to raise you in tough places. I had to stay on you. I had to keep you away from the wrong crowd. I had to trust that my lessons that I taught you would bring you home when I wasn't with you. I had to trust the lessons that I was teaching you, the sacrifices that I was making wasn't gonna get you caught up with most of your boys that was in the neighborhood. And then just to see the relief, right? It was a relief valve when I signed my scholarship and went to LSU. But it also was a relief when I was able to go pro. And it wasn't about finances. My mom knew I was gonna take care of it, but that wasn't even a thing to do. That was an understood thing that was gonna happen once I got drafted. But just the relief of her saying, I raised him. He didn't spend one night in jail, didn't get caught up in the dope game, I didn't lose him to the streets like a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I grew up with. So I think for her, it was like that coming into his own moment. Like he worked, he grinded, he used the lessons that myself and my dad taught, that they taught me. And it was just like, man, I can get him out of Baton Rouge. Like I can get him, and you can go start living. And y'all know us as black men, bro, especially sons, that's mama's boys. It was 2 months later, I was like, you got to move to Dallas.
Got to get moms where you at, man.
Yes, sir.
ASAP.
Yes, sir.
Well, then talk to us about that. So, your mom was able to feel a great sense of relief, but for you being the son, how much anxiety did you feel, like the pressure to even make it to the NFL, to be able to take care of your moms? Was that weighing heavily on you when you was like going through your process in high school and college?
Absolutely, man. Like you see the struggle, right? Like making decisions on whether we gonna have electricity or water. I was that type of kid. Like,
yeah,
I'm just grand. Like, and I always used to think about it too, man. Like, and it frustrates me now that I have a little something and I'm able to take care of my family and a roof over my head. Dude, my mom worked all week and couldn't pay the bill. Like that is not supposed to happen. And you got a lot of people that cast a lot of that judgment off on a lot of black families that's impoverished and put it as lazy or not working. No, my mom was grinding. It just wasn't enough, you know. And I was big. I ate, bro. So it wasn't enough. But for me, man, just I guess I was always in the mindset of mom and sister gotta be taken care of. Like I have to do something, right? Like look, man, I was big, fast, played football, but you still don't know. It's always that anxiety of I could get injured. I tore my meniscus 2 weeks before the combine. Like I couldn't perform at the combine. That was my first major injury, my first surgery that was sports related was 2 weeks before the combine. So it was a lot of that going on, man. But to that point, y'all already know what you go back to: faith and foundation. Like,
absolutely.
And my mom was, that was the thing. Like the Lord will take care of you as long as you stay prayed up, and we gonna keep praying for you. Everything gonna work out how it's supposed to. And you hearing this, but you also got to put the work in.
Yeah.
And you like, this is what people are saying. I don't know if they in touch with the Lord, like we in touch with the Lord. They got to make decisions. But it was my mentality was I put the work in, is I'm in a great position. I'm in a better position than 99% of the world at this point, even if I get drafted the last person in the draft. And just an overwhelming feeling to say thank you with my actions, with what I did for my mom and my sister and my grandmother, who is another big part of who I am. But that was my anxiety. My anxiety was football was going to take care of itself. Like once I got through the process and dealt with all of that stuff, the anxiety came from, when am I going to be able to change my family's life? Like that was my biggest thing. Like when can I get her out of this situation into a better situation from a financial standpoint? And that was probably the part for me that was the toughest kind of road that I had to travel, because the unknown of if I was going to be able to legitimately do that would weigh on me at times. And then when I got drafted and I realized I was 20th, I was like, well, we ain't got to pick between lights and water no more.
We made it. Now that's really dope, man. And I think, that causes a lot of trauma for a lot of us, just thinking about, because we watch sometimes our parents, our grandparents struggle, to make ends meet. And to your point, like I remember watching my grandmother. I'm in college and my grandmother is working like a dog, like every day, long hours, can barely stay on her feet. And I got a job in college. I was working I got a job at Walmart. and they was gonna pay me. They was open up a new Walmart in Atlanta. They was gonna pay me like $10 an hour. And she asked me how much I was getting paid, and I told her 10, and she was like, I only make 750.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like that's crazy. You've been working for 40, 50 years now. You're making 750. And
Yeah, man.
I've been in college for a semester and they giving me $10. So, those types of things always push me to say, you know what, I got to get out of school so I can help my family, just give them anything that they need to, help accelerate their lives a little bit. So look, man, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, it's funny when we have these conversations, man, because now we get to a point where we've grown and we've got into certain circles, and then you start trying to, my big thing for the last like 3 or 4 years is how do I create generational wealth, right? Like, because I'm 38. I'm young. My wife is young. We got 3 kids that's young, but the idea of generational wealth for us is when we leave, our kids shouldn't have to worry about trying to create that again.
Right.
Like the generation before us, your grandmother, my mom, my dad, whoever was before us, dude, they was really grinding out of Jim Crow.
Yeah.
Like they was just grinding to be accepted, integrated. They had to go status quo. They had to quote unquote act white in order to get certain positions. And then, and sometimes I get frustrated with our generation for not realizing that struggle and not realizing the disconnect, because now, our generation is, I'm not conforming. I'm gonna wear my dreads and still be the CEO. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do this, and like all of these situations that we see, that we understand now because we have more education. We've seen more of the world. Social media has connected us in a way that. But the bottom line is, man, when what you talked about stir my spirit all the time, because our parents, our grandparents, dude. Our grandparents 2 generations removed from slavery.
Yeah, that's right.
Like people always think about that, like, oh man, every time we get on TV, 300 years ago, 400 years ago. No, dude, like if my grandmother just passed at 85, her grandmother was a slave. My grandmother worked for a white family, not as a slave, on the same land that her grandmother was a slave.
Yeah.
So it was that, to your point, like we 750 to your grandmother was like life changing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, man, that always get me going, because I think about that a lot, man. Just not being so hard on the non-progressive thought of our mothers and fathers and grandmothers, because dude, they had to do all of the things in our mind today we would never do to get us to sit in our nice offices and get together and talk about things that we've gone through. So it's always, that's always touches me.
And I think that's a great point. And Jesse and I often talk about this with our guests too, and it's about fathers, but I think this is just about generations in general. Like we got to give, other generations more grace. Yes. You know what I mean? Because you're right. Like we're very progressive in our thoughts, and like what you just said is like the perfect embodiment of me. I'm like, I told my mom, I told my wife, I told my dad, I'm getting my nose pierced, I'm growing my hair out, I'm coloring my hair. Like I don't care. Like when I was in college, they told you had to get a haircut, do things a certain way. Now I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be a CEO and a boss, and I'm gonna do it my way. But I know them, and my parents both. My dad was in the military, and my mom worked for the government. She retires this year. They've worked for the same company for 30 and 40 years. You know what I mean? It was a way of doing things. So things that I'll say or do, they would never do. But I learned like in my mid 30s, it's like, you know what, I can't get mad at them because they won't approach things the same way that I did. They lived through a different era. So I got to give them grace and understanding. Like if they weren't thinking about generational wealth, it wasn't because they didn't want to, it's because they didn't have the capacity to do so. They was just trying to make it. Right. You know what I mean? They wanted, they didn't have
the time to think about
it. They just wanted to make it. So we, whether it's like, dealing with them or even like in situations where say your father wasn't around or your mother wasn't around, it's like, you don't know what they were going through at that time. So yes, while it can be traumatic and you don't want to make excuses for it, you got to give people grace to understand, like, life is tough, man. And until we become adults and have our own children, our own families, you don't really understand what people had to go through to get here.
Right. And y'all know how we use the term "get it out the mud." Like, you know, they was really getting it out the mud for real. Like,
really. They really were, man.
Yeah. Well, then transitioning, bro, you know, you had a great career, you know, on the NFL side of it, man, but you've done something that both Jesse and I admire. You know, we talked about this before we jumped on and saying, like, you know, you are one of our favorite analysts at ESPN. And I think, you know, you've been a breath of fresh air in terms of like just somebody new who played the game, coming in with a fresh, you know, perspective and experience. So talk to us about that transition and what it's been like going from player to the other side, having to actually talk about it now, which I know is difficult as a former player because players are sensitive now. They don't want to hear y'all really talking about each other.
They don't want to hear it, man. What I will say, man, is so to what we were talking about, like when I played for the Cowboys, fortunately, I realized what I had at my disposal. And a big part of that was I was in the top 5 media market, and I had an opportunity to be around people that work for ESPN and Fox and all of these big networks. And through them interviewing me about the Cowboys, I would shoot questions back, you know. And I always had a healthy respect for their jobs, and I always thought that it was tough. Dude, imagine walking into a locker room with 53 grown men after they done got mud stumped by 20. And you got to go up and ask them why they got mud stumped by 20, right? And he's 6'5", 315, and you 5'6", 170, right? So I always wanted to kind of facilitate a relationship between myself and media that was open, but also you not getting any information that's private to this team. And I thought I did a good job of that. I did a radio show when I played in Dallas. I would do local television in the off season. I'm a hunting fisher. I grew up hunting and fishing with my grandfather. I started a hunting fishing show called DFW Outdoorsman in Dallas. So I always, like media, I studied and graduated from LSU in communication. So it was always something that was kind of in there about me. I didn't know. My grandmother spoke on my life that I was going to be a pastor. And my mom tells me all the time, when I was born, my grandmother was like, that boy gonna preach. And I didn't, you know, that's not church for me. That's on ESPN. You know what I'm saying? Because I do try to give not only a sports connection, a people connection, a Black experience connection, a relationship connection between Black and white and Asian and Hispanic people, because sports did that for me. Like I never walked into the world thinking it couldn't be different, because I was always in locker room. Right. Like I saw the very small manifestation of a utopia. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even if you didn't like how something was going, we were all pulling in the same direction, and my success was directly tied to your success. But man, it was let me see. It is, for me, getting into media was to be a voice for people that was not supposed to be big in media. I'm Southern. I got a Southern draw. I'm a big dude. I like to stay clean though, but I'm a big dude. I don't speak the with the vernacular that normally people want to see on TV. I'm just me. And I always, like, my whole idea when I got into TV, like big TV with ESPN, was I don't want anybody to watch this, number one, and not have a good time, but also feel like these people having a conversation that I'm not in. Right. You know what I'm saying? And the one thing I love about our people, because the one thing I love about our people is not only do they challenge me to speak on issues, to be a voice in those situations when they enter that arena of sports intersecting with culture and what's going on in the world. But they also feel like Marcus my cousin, or my uncle, or my brother, or the dude that come, or the dude that just be at all the family gatherings and we don't know who the hell he is. You know what I'm saying? Like we all got that experience. So I just wanted to bring the cookout experience, the locker room experience, and obviously my expertise in football. Man, I put my 10,000 hours. Like I know everything you need to know about football. I can break down coverages, plays, players, coaches. I got all relationships. Played for the greatest college coach to ever coach the game. Played for one of the greatest NFL coaches, Bill Parcells and Nick Saban. Like, so all of that stuff, in my mind, I was like, people already know that. Like, you can go on Wikipedia and find all of that out about Marcus. When I enter this media game, I want people to feel like I want to invite this dude to my crib and just chill and hang out, talk to him, and relax. And I hope that's what comes across. And I think that's what's resonating with people thus far in my career.
Yeah, man, that's dope, and it ain't no hoping, man. That's exactly what it is. That's how we feel. That's how even before you coming on or you just agreeing to come on, we know it's gonna be a cool conversation just because you make everything personable and just you being yourself, man. And that's shared through the screen, man. We feel that, and I'm pretty sure everybody else watching feels that too, man. But some, people may not know, but you was a hooper too, man. Gatorade Player of the Year, Louisiana. Was it year 2000, 2001, something like that, man? Like, what was your game like if you had to compare your game to an NBA player, man? Who was you on the court?
First of all, I don't look like a hooper no more. So, but I still got a jumper. You still get your lights.
The jumper, the last thing to go.
The last thing to go. Man, it was always Barkley. It was always Chuck. And, I know Chuck, know him well. He's a big brother of mine, mentor, but that was always the comparison. Josh, I grew up, my sister is my hero. My sister got picked before me. She was the hooper. My sister was the hooper. I was supposed to be the big football player that was just, I was the big little brother. My sister was the hooper. My sister was all state. She top 10 leading scorer in women's basketball in Louisiana history. She got a scholarship, played at LSU, blew her knees out, wanted to go into criminal justice. So I just wanted to be her when it came to basketball. Like literally, man, it wasn't Jordan for me. It wasn't Barkley. It was my sister. I was like, if I can play like her, I can be good at basketball. So I chased her in basketball and eventually became 6'5" and 260 and started jumping and developed a jumper and got around, a lot of basketball players, a lot of great basketball minds. Josh Pastner, the coach at Georgia Tech right now, was my summer league coach when I played for the Houston Hoops. My coach in high school was a legendary coach named Joel Hawkins. We ran off like 15, 16 straight state championships. We were ranked in USA Today all 4 years when I was in high school. I was the 27th ranked basketball player coming out of high school. I had scholarships to all of the schools: Duke, North Carolina, Syracuse, St. John's, Georgetown. When John Thompson passed, I put up a letter on Get Up from John Thompson had written to me and was like, look, man, I know you're a football player, but if you come to Georgetown, you playing basketball.
That's dope.
So it was, man, hooping was my challenge. And I think I got really good at it because I wasn't good at it. First time I stepped on the football field, I was busting heads. Like, I wanted to hit. I wanted to run and, do all that. But basketball was the one that I had to actually work to get really good at. And then when I finally started experiencing some of that success and realizing, like, man, I'm playing against, Tyson Chandler and D. Wade and these guys, and Darius Miles in my class, all of these dudes, they got drafted. Me and Karan Butler were roommates at Nike camp. Me and Big Zach Randolph, we were roommates my senior year at Nike camp. So I did it, man. I went through all of those steps, got invited to the Cleveland Cavaliers camp. Like, this was a time when high school players were jumping. Like, I went to Camden and me and DeJuan Wagner hooped on the courts. You know what I'm saying? So we played in the Kentucky Derby Classic. We played in the Jordan Classic. I didn't get invited to the McDonald's, which still pisses me off to this day. But man, it was for me, like basketball was, I love basketball, man. My favorite thing to watch is college basketball. Like I would watch a college basketball game before I watch an NFL game. I watch the NBA when they get the playoffs. I'm a big LeBron fan, but I love the skill and just the ability of these dudes. Like watching James Harden play basketball to me is fascinating, bro.
Yeah.
Nobody can stop him.
Yeah.
Nobody can stop him from getting a bucket. Don't get me going on basketball. I'm talking about that. But yeah, man, I was a hooper. Gatorade Player of the Year, got recruited, was supposed to play both at LSU. And after one spring and one season with Nick Saban, I realized I'm going to die if I go hoop with the man that this dude have on football. So I gave up the hoop dreams. But if I walk in arenas or if I'm around NBA guys, they know. They know.
I know you'll get a bucket. No, that's what's up, man. Me and James, we love the game of basketball. It's an art to watch for sure. Your story kind of remind me. I'm from St. Louis, and I grew up playing AAU. Adrian Claiborne was actually the center on my AAU team, and he was kind of that. In football, he was a beast, but like basketball was more so that challenge. He was a big dude. He was a beast in the paint, grab rebounds, he could jump. So, Adrian Claiborne was my center on one of my AAU teams. So no, that's dope, man. And, let's see.
The crazy thing is, people used to. So, dude, we used to go to these tournaments, right? And when I played for a summer league team called the Houston Hoops. Emeka Okafor, who ended up being the Naismith Basketball Player of the Year at UConn, went on to the NBA. When he first showed up, dude, he couldn't walk and chew gum. Like I remember Emeka when he was we used to call him the Big African, and he had uncanny timing. He could block shots. Yeah. And Josh and all of us was like, yeah, this dude, he could be something. He was just a ball of clay. And then I look up 4 years later, and this some of the best player in college basketball.
Killing him, yeah.
I played with Carlos Hurd. I played with Lawrence Robbins. I played with TJ Ford. I played with dudes that went to the league, NBA. I played with dudes that got pissed off that I didn't try to go and play in college and thought I could play in the league. So, man, it was like hooping was that deal. But what I was getting at is it'll freak people out when I come out and be playing the two, bro. And they be like, this bug 270. And he playing the two, bringing the ball up the court. So basketball was that deal, man. That game there I love.
That's crazy. We knew a little bit about your hooping background, especially being fans and hearing you talk about it on ESPN. But after hearing all of this, you played with some real hoopers. I think it's time for Stephen A. and Max put a little more respect on your name when you be talking to NBA talk, bro.
Bro, listen, they know. Trust me, they know. ESPN got some of the greatest researchers in the world. They know what that hoop game was like.
That's dope, man. Well, then, transitioning, we wanted to get into, who is Marcus as a father? You mentioned you got 3 kids, so talk to us about who you are as a father.
Man, I love them to death. I'm flawed. I'm a flawed father because none of us are gonna get it right. But what I believe in my experience is when they wake up every morning, they better know my dad loved me and he gonna be there for me. Like that's the foundation. I got 3 kids. My oldest is Makaria. She's the number 1 14-year-old volleyball player in the country.
Nice.
My son is 11. He's 5'10". He plays baseball. He's a lefty. And basketball. He can hoop. And then my youngest is 8. And we still trying to figure out what she going to do. That's Miko. So Makaria, Marcus Jr., and Miko. But my 8-year-old is the most athletic. And she the most grimy. Like she is a dog. My oldest is just a killer. Like she hate losing. So all of her work and practice and everything goes towards winning. Foundationally, I just love them, man. Like I love them. My wife and I are not secretive. We talked about George Floyd. We talk about sex. We talk about things that are real life, man. Like my job is to send my kids into the world and whatever I can give them, they should not experience it and say, I don't know what to do.
Right.
Like as a father, that I feel like that is my responsibility, along with obviously being a protector and providing a roof over their head. And I tell my wife my wife, some dudes be tripping. Some dudes don't know what they want. I told my wife, look, if you work, it's because you want to work. Like, my job is to make sure you have everything you need so I can have everything I need from you and our kids can have everything they need from us.
Right.
That's how I set up my family structure. My wife was a hooper, dog. My wife got drafted first round in the WNBA to the Washington Mystics. Like, she hooped at LSU. So my wife had money before I got out of college. So she knew, she grinded. She knew what to grind. She from Detroit, grew up in the, I married a gangster, bro. So it wasn't for her, it wasn't I'm gonna sit back and let a man take care of me. Like, that just wasn't her, that wasn't her thought process. But when we had kids and when I was playing in the league, she realized, like, I gotta shift my focus. I gotta, she sacrificed. She gave up her hoop to take care of me, take care of our oldest daughter when she was born. And after that, man, after she did that, I said, well, for the rest of my life, I'm gonna sacrifice for you and my kid.
That's amazing.
So that's it, man. Like, my children, when they roll me away, all I want all three of them to say is that my dad loved me unconditionally. Whether I wanted to be an astronaut, whether I wanted to whether I wanted to change my sex, whether I was gay, whether I was straight, whether I had a community of white friends or black friends, as long as what you're doing is not affecting somebody else and putting them in a bad situation, I loved you unconditionally. And I left them something. And not financially. I left them with morals. I left them with characteristics of being a good person, and I left them with the lesson that my uncle gave me: favor is better than money. So treat people the right way, and I think they taking those lessons to. I think they holding on to those lessons. But the one thing my kids would tell you if you interviewed them is that my mom and dad don't have no filter, and we tap that butt. We whoop up in my house. I know, now they want to send parents to jail and do all of that. Fortunately, we did all of that early. My daughter 14, last time she got a whooping, she was 5. And my son is 11 last time. Yeah, he more of a hard head. He was probably 7 to 8. And I don't think my baby girl, I've never whooped my baby girl. My wife then tore her butt up a couple of times. But it always for us, man, is treat people the right way, do right by people, do the right things, and that favor will be over your life,
Yeah.
But and y'all know, man, our foundation is the Lord, Jesus Christ. Like it ain't no, and I don't sensationalize God and Jesus. Like that is the reason.
Right.
Like I tell people all the time, I don't need to preach a sermon. You can believe what you want to believe, pray to who you want to pray to, worship to who you want to worship to. I know for me personally, my wife lost her mom at 13. I know for her personally, because we've been together since we were 14 years, we'll be married. The foundation of my life, the foundation of my mom's and my family's life before me and the way they prayed for me, that wasn't nothing but the Lord. Ain't nothing but the Lord got me here, bro. Like, so, that's what we raising our kids on.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. And one of the things you talked about, which I actually admire a lot, is that, nowadays in 2021, it's very difficult to, be a person of principles and choose to raise your family in a way that you see fit, because now the media, social media, everybody wants to tell you like what you're supposed to do with your kids. You can't whoop your kids. You can't talk to your kids this way. You can't do that. And while I agree that, some of the stuff that we had to go through and maybe our parents had to go through ain't acceptable. Like, we ain't got to just run you through the ringer just because, but like, how do you navigate that? How did you and your wife navigate saying, you know what, we're going to discipline our kids the way we want to, because, we think this is right for them. How was that a conversation y'all had before y'all had children, or how did that work?
Absolutely. We both wanted to know foundationally how we wanted to raise our kids. And that's a conversation a lot of these young Black couples are not having.
Yeah.
That needs to be a part of the couples counseling and the marriage counseling and all of that. But my wife and I, we came from similar background, like spare the rod, save the child. You know what I'm saying? And it was our Bible principles, man. Like, and I'm not getting on here I'm not pseudo-religious, but the principles in the Bible work. Like the whole book of Psalms really like is song, but it also is a love story. The book of Proverbs, it really does teach you about financial literacy. Like we got into that. So when we were dating, when I proposed, when I was engaged, we talked about it. We was like, look, if we get our kids, this is the key for parents. Like if I have nuggets that I'm gonna sell, the key for parents is get them early. So you don't have to deal with it later, right? Like it's like you making them butt whipping deposits early, and that doesn't just like I think the difference between our parents, they'll whoop us but not tell us nothing. Like they'll whoop us for what we did, and then it'll just be a whooping, and then we'll be like, damn, they hope we put it together that I better not do that no more. But we wanted to be a little bit more involved in why you did that. Like what? And now that you got your whooping, and everything wasn't a butt whooping. Some things most of the time we talk. Our kids ain't bad kids, so we don't have to pull the belt out unless they do something outlandish to one of their siblings. But for us, man, it was always like if we build their foundation, if we treat them to treat people the right way, if we teach them respect and how to talk to people. If we teach them how to identify disrespect and to remove yourself instead of getting emotional and getting disrespectful back, like those are the things that we wanted to teach them. Principles about how to deal and not succumb to peer pressure, not succumb to the crowd is moving this way, so I guess this is the right way to move. No, you assess, you figure out what's your best route and figure out the things you need to do, not to just have success, but to be right. To be in a position to treat everybody the way they should be treated. So that's kind of how we built it and facilitated it. And as of right now, man, it's working. My kids are respectful, bro. If my son popped up on this screen, he'll call both of y'all, yes, sir. That's just how we rock. My daughter gonna shake your hand and look you in the eye. She's not gonna, you know what I'm saying? With all of those principles that I think are very important, that my wife thinks are very important in order for you to not only be respected, but to show respect. That's what we were trying to do early on. And now we just watching them, man. We got great kids, bro. Like they kids, they mischievous and they get bored and they want to, but man, like my son, bro, my son yesterday, right? He wanted me to grill some lobster for him. And I'm like, yeah, typical rich kid. I'm like, yeah. I turned him on the lobster, which was a mistake, but he wanted me to grill some lobster. But bro, this dude went and took the lobster out of the freezer, unthawed it, seasoned it, went and lit the grill. He was like, Dad, everything ready. All you gotta do is grill it. Because I won't let him go on the fire just yet.
Yeah.
My daughter last night, every night, my kids, we try to get in bed 9:45, 10 o'clock. Every night, my kids come in our room, my wife and our room, and we hang out like an hour and 15 minutes before they go to bed. If it's the weekend, we a family, we love each other, bro. My mom lives with us. They got in-house grandma, they got in-house getting spoiled. But at the same time, bro, my kids care about people. And that's really that's my ultimate goal. That's my wife's ultimate goal, is for them to really love people and judge people on their character and be high character individuals and be worth everything to yourself. Yeah. And not let TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter determine your value based on what you're watching. So my kids are very in tune with who they are. They built up in this house. so they don't have to go look to be built up by somebody else. My daughters are built up by me. So they like, I don't need a man to take care of me. I got my dad. Like, so it's all of that type of stuff, man. So it's, we raised our kids on love, discipline, respect for themselves, and to be who they are and be unapologetically that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best course of action for them. And my wife does as well. So we're going to raise them that way.
I love to hear that, man. Go ahead, Jesse.
Nah, man, I was just taken back, man. Just all of that you just said is just super dope, man. I just want to, give you your roses while you on this call, man, because there's no guide or book to fatherhood, man, but it looks like or seems like or feels like you're doing a great job in creating that foundation, like you said.
Absolutely.
So I just want to give you your roses while you're on the Dear Fathers podcast, man, because again, like I mentioned, I don't have any kids yet, but these conversations with people like yourself and even learning from James is super helpful for me. And I feel like, once that time does come, that I'm going to be the most prepared, person for that journey, man. And I even want to take it back with you a little bit, take it back 14 years, man. We do this segment called Dads and Delivery, man. Because a lot of times you only hear about the experience of the woman in the delivery room, right? Mm-hmm. So what was your experience like in the delivery room, physically, mentally, emotionally? Like, how was that for you as a Black man, bringing your child into the world?
First, initially, it was supportive, right, of my wife. She going through it. She, and pregnancy and being there for it while playing football and, seeing her go through the stages of pregnancy and then finally getting there. But, man, in that delivery room, I remember I almost fainted. Like my wife told the nurse, make him sit down. And then when my daughter was born, it was an overwhelming feeling of, like I tell people, man, like fellas, I ain't trying to crack on Black men or fathers, period. I just don't know how you walk away from that. I legit, that feeling of emotion, looking at my daughter for the first time, holding her, I just don't know how you say, all right, I'm good, I'm a bounce.
Yeah.
You handle your business. Now I get it. I get circumstance. I understand all of that. But when that was my overwhelming of, I'm in love and I didn't work for it, right? If you think about it, all of our relationships prior to, we had to facilitate love. We had to introduce it. We had to see if we would get there. We had to, whether that's with a woman, whether that's with your mom and dad, you still are growing and becoming yourself, and you're trying to figure out, like, quote unquote, I'm supposed to love my parents, but what if I hate them, right? But you didn't choose that. You didn't choose that. My mom used to tell me all the time, you don't owe me anything, right? Like, I brought you into this world. What I owed you to try to give you the best life. So that was my thought process when my daughter was born, man. But be in that delivery room and seeing my wife go through that, I swear, bro, my wife had a halo. Like, they turned into angels or something. I was like, how did you just do that? And looking at her and looking at my daughter and realizing, like to be corny, the Lion King circle of life. Like, now the responsibility is not only for you and I to have a great relationship, it's also to bring a child into this relationship and be an example for what a relationship should be. Yeah. I thought about all of that. And then after we got her home, I went through like a week of depression because when I got back to work, it was a different animal. It was like, you ain't just playing football no more. Yeah. Like, you ain't just playing football so you and your wife could have good vacations and y'all can have a nice house and drive nice cars and people could say, oh, look how dope Marcus and Aisha is. They like young, Black, and they successful. They both pro athletes. They love in basketball, football / all of that was out the window. The responsibility now is to, as a man, it's not Macaria's, my youngest daughter at the time, it's not her responsibility to make you better. It's your responsibility to get better for her. And I think that week of thinking about like the pressure of, I can't make her choose between lights and water. I can't bounce her around. All of my childhood experiences that I would say were not ideal, my mom just making a way, overwhelmingly came into my mind saying, I can't have my kids in that situation. And I think after that, after I got through that point, I just had a new grind, man. I wasn't grinding for myself no more. I wasn't grinding to buy chains and go to Vegas and get nice cars. I wasn't grinding, you know, to drive back to the old high school or the old hood and people say, man, look, Mark has made it. My whole focus shifted. And I was like, all of my responsibility, all of the things that I'm doing, the work that I'm putting in is for this little one. And then my son came and it became for him and it became for my youngest daughter. And in that delivery room, the overwhelming feeling of love, man, like, because they can't do nothing for themselves, you know, and it was the best, scariest, most nerve-wracking, anxious filled day of my life when she first came out. And then when my second one came, I was a little bit better. And my third one came, I was like, man, we done this. Like, we good.
Yeah.
We got to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, man. And I totally agree with that sentiment you shared there. You know, I'm a father of three myself. I have two sons, and our middle child is our daughter. And I can just tell you, being there for each birth, it's just the feeling you get in seeing that, and then it's not even. This is why I could never walk away from my children. You know what I mean? Like, seeing them come into this world is amazing, but then also seeing my wife being the giver of life in that situation. Like, each time you love her even more because you like, man, you just went through this. You brought a baby into this world, and like, I don't know how you did it.
For me.
Yeah, for me, I don't know how your body went through that. You know what I mean? So it's an amazing feeling every time. So like, I've always had the mindset of like, I could never, like, it doesn't matter what happens in the world. Like, I could never not be there for my children because I witnessed what their mom did. And no matter what, you know, we're married and we're doing great. But, you know, God forbid something terrible happened, there would never be no bad blood or anything because I know what she meant to me and to my children, and I'm always going to protect that no matter what.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So but for you, because, you know, I got two sons and a daughter, and I know having my daughter second, it definitely changed me. Being a girl dad changed me. But you started with your daughter. So like, how did having a girl change you? Did it soften you up? Because you this big, tough football player. Everybody expect you to be macho, man. Like, how did that change you up being a girl dad?
Dude, I was, the funny thing is, man, I was very in touch with my emotions. Like, I grew up around my mom and sister. So I saw how women operated. I grew up a great respect for the tireless energy that they have. But when my daughter was born, man, it changed. I was like, I care about her more than all y'all. and I think for me, man, just the definition of protection became more prevalent. It changed everything. Like, protecting her was not only about her well-being, it was about her mind, it was about her body, it was about her understanding of what a man is supposed to be, right? And I only can show and facilitate how a man is supposed to be to her by how I treat her mom.
Absolutely.
So I had when she was born, man, for me it was about being better. I need to be better. And I didn't know what that better was, but I knew I needed to be better. I knew I needed to be better for my wife. I knew I needed to be better for her. And I was never one of those guys, man. I don't have all of those NFL stories. Like, I wasn't running the streets. I ain't have 20, 30 women. Like, that wasn't my makeup. You know, dudes did their thing. I ain't say nothing. I went to the club. I had a good time, but I never was a dude that felt like I had to be in the streets. You know what I'm saying? So the perspective of being a girl dad for me was, you should know exactly who you are and what you'll accept, and that'll keep you away from the dudes you don't need to be around.
Yeah.
Like, right? So self-worth. Like, I feel like sometimes when we parenting, we do it a little bit backwards. We try to teach our kids what they should look for, right? Like we try to tell them, like, look for this, like if these qualities, these characteristics. But we very rarely tell them your energy going gravitate people towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Your energy will bring like-minded people. How you operate, how you move, how you self-respect will bring people to respect you, because it's just you facilitate a culture within your own mind, within your own dynamic. And if something don't fit in that culture, you can immediately tell. I tell people all the time, it's just like raising my kids or running a business. Like, you create a culture, you make a hire, they don't fit in that culture, you don't have to fire them. They root themselves out.
Absolutely.
And I try to teach my daughter that, like, you having self-respect, not only as a woman, as a Black woman, as a strong Black woman, as a Black woman that has an example of a mother who's a strong Black woman, a father who's a strong Black man, all of these things that's being poured into you, you better not go out there and sacrifice that for nobody else. Like, and I'm a firm believer in that. I'm big on energy, man. That's why when y'all see me on television, I'm jovial. I'm laughing. When stories are serious, I bring that type of energy. Because that's me. Yeah. Right. And now as your kids get older, you teach them how to be chameleons. You teach them how to, facilitate their attitudes and how they look at things. But foundationally, man, like self-respect, and I think being a father of girls, the number one most important lesson that we can teach them is self-respect.
Absolutely.
And, I look at my 14-year-old, bro, and I almost get emotional about it, because she knows who she is, and she knows exactly what she wants, and she knows what she's not willing to accept in her life. And, that's a big shout out to her mom, because they spend time together, and she teaches her about being a woman and the womanly things that I can't. And she moves like that. Like my daughter 14, bro, she'll come down here without anything and cook everybody breakfast. She'll wake her sister and brother up when it's time for school and get them ready. Like that's not something that she feels like her mom and dad is forcing her to do. She's operating with her own energy now, right? And now we just giving her lessons and nuggets, and trying to guide her, man. But it goes back to that foundation. But being a father, man, self-respect, man. Like, and look, you could do a hell of a job. I tell parents, man, don't be hard on yourself. You could do a hell of a job raising your kids, and they still go out there and belong to the streets. You know what I'm saying? But you got to know as a parent that you did it all to try to keep them at least in a vein where they know who they are, and eventually if they do step out, they know, all right, I need to get back to this foundation, or they never even touch it because that self-respect.
Yes. And at the end of the day, kids are going to be kids. We all have gone through stuff. We've all done things that we knew we weren't supposed to do. But sometimes you got to go and experience it yourself. But it's about that foundation that you're talking about, and just hoping and praying that, I instill these things in my children. They may veer to the left and to the right at times, but hopefully they come back to the foundation, and that helps guide their decisions going forward. So I totally agree with that sentiment.
I think we raising them to not stress out when they leave.
Yeah.
Like I tell my wife all the time, like when they leave, I just want to know that she know that the streets ain't for her. You know what I'm saying? Like, and when my son leave, I want him to know he don't have to have 5 and 10 women to feel like a man.
No.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want him, like the stigmas, my son, bro, he probably gonna be a big time athlete. The sucker, he tall, he must, like, I know what's coming, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to, same with my girls, self-respect, bro. Because when you giving yourself to if you giving yourself to all of these women, man, you got all of these soul ties going on, and you dealing with issues of pregnancy and STDs and like, bro. When I tell y'all, I talk to my kids, like this ain't no. My son 11, he know, he know everything. Like he knows everything, and that's a conversation. My 8-year-old ain't there yet. We ain't went in on her. like 10 is usually that age where we like, okay, it's time to start introducing some of these things because they get to the tournaments and they get to the, they traveling and they around different kids that parents may have different philosophies. So we all try to facilitate that, but self-respect, man. And then, too, like, bro, you don't have to live up to what the thought is or the idea is of what you supposed to be doing. It's cool to have one woman. Like, it's dope. Like, bro, my wife right now, like I'm looking at her, she in the kitchen cooking, right? And I look at her maneuver through this house, and I ain't saying I wasn't dumb early on. I was dumb.
We all were.
Married. But the bottom line is, bro, I'm like, man, I'm not giving that up for 2 hours.
Yeah.
I ain't giving that up for a trip. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is at this point for me. I'm like, look, women DM me, be wanting me to do stuff. And Ashley is my publicist. I direct them that way. Dude, a couple weeks ago, I don't know if y'all saw it, but this whole thing with Wendy Williams. And it was another dude named Mark Spears, who I know that played in the NFL. Dude, my DMs went crazy. Like, bro, are you divorced? What are you doing? Like, first of all, you trying to holler at Wendy Williams? Like, I was like, what? I was like, what's going on? So I get on IG, bro, and I got all of these messages, man. It's women in my messages, it's dudes in my messages. It was women in my weird, bro. Like, cause I'm not in the game, so I don't understand. Like, I got women like, you don't have to get Wendy, you could take care of me, and so I put a public service announcement out there. It ain't me, like, and that one, my wife was like, my wife laughed. She was like, man, seriously. But it's just that for me, man. Like I'm trying to teach them, man. Like you could change the narrative. You could be a real dude and still have as much fun and as good of a time without having all this extra career.
I agree, man. And I told James the story too about how when I was younger, man, I just used to have like one girlfriend, and my friends used to be like, man, you weird, man. Like, you just that's just those societal pressures that they put on you, man. But you said a lot of key words that kind of relate to something else that we're big about at Dear Fathers, which is mental health. You talked about things like counseling or depression, self-worth, self-respect, and things of that nature. Have you been to therapy or counseling of any sort, and how has that impacted you?
Majorly, bro. My wife and I were gonna get a divorce our first year in the marriage. We sat at the table across from each other with our lawyer, and in that moment, both of us were like, we letting people that don't know us facilitate how we gonna come to whatever agreement we coming to. And the crazy, when I write the book, y'all are the first people that have ever heard this. In that moment, my wife and I looking at each other like, so we didn't put in all this work, and we have went through all of these things together, and we've sacrificed for each other. For 1 year into it, we gon', you know what I'm saying? And it was me. It was me. My wife will tell you it was me, but I'm telling you it was me. And it was because my idea of how it was supposed to go from the time you married to the next day at home wasn't working that way. And not understanding, I come from a home that was divorced.
Right.
So I don't even know how to be married. I don't even know how to facilitate a relationship. I don't even know when you're not telling me something to identify that something is still wrong. Like, I had no idea about all of that. So what I did was, when I felt impulsive, or when I felt like the marriage wasn't going the way it was supposed to go, my idea was, well, I guess it ain't working. And I get out of this one, something else will work. Cause my idea of whatever the hell the idea was, I had never seen anybody married, like outside of my mom's mother and father. But we sitting there in that moment, bro, and we both come to the realization, like, we put the lawyers out and the mediator. Like, this is us. And I'm like, what's up? And she was like, she was like, it's just so weird. Like, we got people speaking for us. I know you. We've been dating. We dated. We, like, what is happening? And both of us were like in the fall. We like, what is it? Young, bro, 23. Like just trying to, and then I'm feeling the pressure of being in the league. Like, it was a lot. It was a lot, man. So, and I knew nothing about therapy, because y'all know the stigma in our community. You don't talk to, you go talk to your grandmother. Go talk to you know what I'm saying? Go talk to your boys or your friend or whatever. And we had a team psychologist, Miss Jackie Stevens, for the Dallas Cowboys. And never in a million years would I thought I would use her service. Just never, because therapy wasn't like, therapy is when you crazy. Let's be honest. Like we grow up thinking you go to therapy because you crazy. Because if you ain't crazy, you don't need to go to therapy. I used to tell my wife all the time. She was like, "Do you think we need to go to marriage counseling?" I was like, can't nobody tell us how to be married. They don't know us. You know what I'm saying? So what I had to do, man, was not only, it goes back to foundation, right? It goes back to the lessons of my mom, my dad, my grandfather, my uncles out there working. You work for what you want. Keep working. Like, so y'all get like the full circle moment of keep working, man. Don't give up until it's over. Right? And we got to that point, man, and we start talking, and we kind of slow. We always joke. We broke up. We started being friends again because we lost that, thinking marriage is supposed to take you to some other level of friendship and facilitate this whole idea of closeness, because you signed some paper and you got married in front of people, which ain't the case. We went friendship, we went back to a relationship, and we stayed married. And through that process, I went to therapy as an individual. And I realized through that, through going through therapy, talking to Miss Jackie, is that, bro, you have formulated this idea of what things are supposed to be like. And that idea that you formulated, anything that deviates from that, you think you need to remove it from your life because you think you can control it. Yeah. And I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, you could have asked me 1,000 times, I would have never related to me wanting people to do what I wanted them to do. And when they didn't, I removed them. I never even thought, I was like, I'm too good of a guy. Like, I'm a good person. Like, but therapy helped me realize that it's not about saying those things. Look at the course of your action. When people don't respond or do what you think needs to be done. So I learned that lesson. Man, we 15, we're about to be 15 years in October. Like, and it took us getting all the way to that point for me to realize, no, you need to go talk to somebody. You need to, it's you. And my wife took some, she obviously took some fault and blame and all of that because we both loved each other through all of this. But for me, it was more about like, bro, you have to realize that whatever your thought about how things are supposed to go, and two, fellas, like, this is a part of my sports background, right? You practice, you work out, you win championships. It's an order. Yep. Right? And when that final result doesn't happen, you can go chronologically through them steps and say, this is why I missed the boat. Like, this is why I didn't win the championship. Relationships ain't got nothing to do with that. Relationships don't have no practice plan. It don't have no blueprint. You know what I'm saying? Like it just, so I had to reprogram my thought on there's a separation between how you operate and how other people operate, and be willing to say, you know what, you might operate in that space better than I do.
Yep.
And be okay with that. And that's what my wife was always ahead of. She older than me, but she was ahead of me because she lost her mom at 13. She had to grow up fast. So she always knew, I want a family, I want a loving husband, all of that stuff she already knew. For me, like majority of my life before I met her and fell in love with her, I wanted to go to the league. That's all I thought about. Like, I want to go to the league, take care of my parents. I wasn't thinking about no girl, no marriage. I'm going to go to the league, take care of my mom, and then everything else will work out. So I went through that process, man, and we, we about to be on year 15. We're going to be on year, we both said we're going to die together. And that's what's going to happen.
That's powerful, man. And I think, it says a lot about you and your wife to be able to kind of sit down and remove the outside noise, because the lawyers, the mediators, that's outside noise. You know what I mean? And they're trying to help you guys find resolution, but you didn't need resolution in that moment. You needed to figure out how to talk to each other, how to heal with each other so that you could grow and build. So I wish and I hope that, as other men hear this, we put this out, that they start to come to terms with understanding like the importance and the value of therapy. I tell Jesse this all the time. Like I started going to therapy last year for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And I had that same mindset you're talking about. Like we hear the word psychologist and we think psycho. Are you crazy? You can't go down. I used to say, man, they can't tell me nothing about nothing. But it's so liberating though when you get to have those conversations and unpack things that you aren't thinking about in that way. So I just wish more men, especially Black men, would be open to it. You know what I mean? Because it'll help save our relationships with our children, our relationships with our spouses, everything. If we just come to that realization that sometimes you need an outside party to kind of help you see the stuff that you ain't seeing on your own.
For sure, man. For sure. And two, man, we have so many societal things working against us as well, as Black men, especially in the family dynamic. I've never been one to blame socioeconomic situations and all of that, but we know systemic racism and all of the systematic things that go on in this country that we have to go extra in order to try to take care of our families, or we have to get outside of ourselves or deviate sometimes from what we actually want to do in order to take care of our family. And a lot of that weighs heavily, man. And then we unpack that stress on our family, like the people in the house and the wife. And then we realize like the punching bag became the people that's trying to save us.
Bro,
and that's what I realized, bro. So it was always for me, man, like after that situation, after we went through that, it was always for me, I'm going to foundationally lock into my family, and everything, to your point, the outside, everything outside of that, if it ain't right, it goes.
Yeah.
Like I told my wife about ESPN. I said, babe, if me working this much is too stressful, I'm out. I don't care about that at all when it comes to this household and you and my kids and my mom, my sister, and my immediate. My niece is living with me now. She's going to attend Howard next fall. And bro, I have, to your point, the piece of saying I'm locked in on my family. All this other stuff is extra.
Yep.
Changed my whole life. And that came through therapy. That reshifted my priorities. Because initially what a society tells Black man is go work, make money, make that the priority, and then your family second, and you making them the priority because you giving the money to them. But what about the emotional? What about the time? What about being there? What about the lessons, seeing you? So, my son, when I was traveling a lot for ESPN, I took my son with me during a work week. And I showed him, like, bro, this is what your father is doing in order to take care of the family, right? And I told him, this doesn't have to be your course of action. But I'm doing this because the family is first.
Right.
I'm not doing this because work is first. I'm not putting these hours at ESPN and traveling and flying all over the country because I care about ESPN and their ratings and these shows and being famous and popular. Everything that I'm doing is so when I leave here, and the reason you on this trip, when I leave here, you have to know it all filters back to the people you care about. And once that became, I thought that was number one until I realized, no, my focus was work. My focus was the NFL. This is what my wife had to deal with. This is what I learned through therapy. My wife had to deal with, first, it's the NFL, okay? Second, is taking care of your body so you can stay in the NFL. Third is taking care of the money and the finances. And then fourth, I come in. But if you reshift it to her being first, it's easier to do the football. It's easier to deal with the workouts. It's easier to bring the money in. Yep. So I had it backwards, man. You know, but through how we grow up and sometimes not having a father, society tells us if you're working and you're bringing in a check, you taking care of your family. No, you ain't. I know a lot. Hey, bro, trust me. I know a lot of rich, miserable people.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them.
That's
and it's because they haven't reshifted that family dynamic first. They got work first, friends and corporate meetings and all of that stuff is before they say, I ain't talked to my wife in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wake up in the morning, I kiss my wife, I check in with her. How you feeling, babe? We going through the process now. We moved to Virginia 10 months ago. We going through the process. We about to buy a house. We closing on our house on the 31st. My wife and I, we talking about all of the things that need to go through the house. But first we check in, bro. Man, check in with the people you love. That's what therapy taught me too. Check in with the people you love, man. Sometimes they going through stuff and they not telling you because they trying to protect you. They trying not to distract you from the things you doing. So I always make it a point. My family tell you, I ask them every day, how you doing? How you doing? What's going on? My kids, they get, you know how kids are. I get on their nerves. How you doing? What's going on? Anything you want to talk to daddy about? Anything you want to talk to mama about? What's going? How is school? How is sports? What's your mental? Like, what's the foundation? You know, this family is gonna check in, and then we'll deal with everything else.
Yeah, no, and that's super important. And just the other day, my girl had said how she appreciates, and I didn't even notice this, like she appreciates how I always just ask how she's doing, how she's feeling. And we always together, but it's just like, I'm still just, checking in, like you said. And I just appreciate that vulnerability talking about therapy, man, because like I said, that's something that we're super passionate about at Dear Fathers. We have our straight mental monthly group therapy sessions.
Okay.
Normally about 30 to 50 guys on every month. And since last April, we've connected over 500 guys with mental health specialists throughout that time, man. So appreciate you just opening up about that because it is super important. And
real work y'all doing too, man.
Yeah.
Bro. Yeah. That's wild, man. Appreciate that.
No, we appreciate you for just opening up about your experience with therapy, man. And just even, kind of shifting gears just a little bit, man, just being a Black man in media, man. How important do you feel is it for us to create our own spaces to tell our own stories and kind of, help shift that narrative? Like how do you feel, that kind of impacts the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to create your own form. What y'all doing here, man? Y'all changing people's lives, bro. Like, I try to do that with my job from a big national stage, right? Like, I try to do that. I try to, if you really follow me, I always try to impart wisdom through my comedy, through when I'm talking about sports in a comic way, when I'm talking about sports in a serious way. I pour my heart out when I talked about George Floyd and my son asking me, why didn't the cop get off his neck, right? The murderer, right? It's so important to do what y'all doing because not only does it give time, right? This conversation that we had, when you're dealing with a big national, I got 3 5-minute splices. right? We're not having a formal, we're not having like a real, like deep. So when you see me on TV, somebody can't say, well, tell me why. And I spend another 6 minutes talking about why I feel a certain way about a thing. A lot of things in television, I get criticized from my own community because a lot of things get lost in translation on TV because you don't have time to explain. And y'all know, bro. Y'all podcast doing well. Y'all got people listening. Y'all know if you don't have time to expound, it gets misconstrued. People formulate what they think because most people are formulating ideas when you can't fully explain it based on their own experience. So when I get people, when we talk about Colin Kaepernick, and I don't say Colin Kaepernick needs to have a job, they like, y'all ain't promoting Colin Kaepernick no more. Like, we get that. Like the black analysts at ESPN, we get that, bro. Cap ain't in the league, and y'all Uncle Tons, y'all sitting up here talking about the NFL and how great it is and all of that. First of all, I love the NFL. I ain't changing that. I don't love a lot of things about what the NFL did and how they operated, but I love the NFL. The NFL changed my life. Like it gave my family an opportunity to start creating the generational wealth. That ain't for everybody. That's other avenues that people have issue with. But the thing I try to always explain and do, man, and the reason why I love forums like you guys have created and platforms is because we get a chance to talk. Not only as people that just met in the interview process, but throughout this triangle that we have, we form the brotherhood. We helping somebody, right? Like we helping somebody. Very rarely do you get a chance to do that on television. So it's very important, man. Like what B. Marshall and Ocho Cinco and Shannon Crowder and those guys doing that I Am Athlete. My cousin is Steven Jackson on All the Smoke. That's my family. Like that's who taught me how to hoop. With him and what they doing at All the Smoke with him and Matt. Like, dude, it's so important. It's so important, man. So I always think about when we have actual time to sit down, not only as men, but as Black men, and be vulnerable and share these experiences and really talk about things, and we start to see the dynamic and how you were, like your father wasn't in your life. My father wasn't in my life every day, but he was in my life enough to have an impact. You grew up with your mother and father. We have 3 different dynamics, but we all starting to kind of understand this fatherhood thing. It's not a blueprint to it. It's not it's not a pamphlet we can put out and say, hey, follow these instructions. It's all really tailored to your experience, the things that you went through. So I think the forums are very important, man, for us to be able to speak, and not only be able to speak, but to be able to speak unapologetically and not worry about what people are going to feel about it, because you being authentic to yourself. And watching these that you guys have done and talking, the authenticity is what's going to keep you in the spot. Like the realness of it, and the number one compliment that I get, because I don't read compliments in the negativity when it's personal. I appreciate it, and I love that people gravitate and are fans, and even the hate. But I always say to myself, man, never lose authenticity. And if you keep that, and if ESPN called me right now and say, we no longer want to employ you, I know I did it the way I was supposed to do. And as long as you can walk away with that, man, you good. But these forums and platforms that y'all creating for Black men to be able to come on and talk and really address things that's going on, it's invaluable. Because we used to have to do this in the dark of night. With nobody finding out. And we had to worry about being lynched for reading books. And we had to worry about not being educated. We had to, like all of these things that you're doing, man, don't just think this is a podcast, fellas. I tell people that don't just think that, man, it's liberation in this. It's a freedom in this. It's a vibe in this, right? So keep passing that along, man. And the one thing that I would recommend to y'all, like going forward, and I know we're not wrapping up, I don't think, I listen to a lot of different things. I listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. I listen to All the Smoke. I listen to I Am Athlete. Don't limit yourself, man. We have so many interesting stories, so many interesting people. Y'all keep telling these stories, man. It's changing people, bro. So keep doing it.
Yeah, and to your point, man, like I really feel like there's healing in this. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, people are learning from it. Shit, I'm learning from it. You know what I'm saying? Just having these conversations, man. So we appreciate you, just kind of, speaking to that and bringing up All the Smoke and I Am Athlete. That's what we look to be, when it comes to what we're doing. We're not, athletes like Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, Ocho Cinco and them. But at the same time, I think we're doing something that's just as impactful, talking about being black men.
Oh, man.
Being black fathers.
Don't think it, bro. You are.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
Because it's more people that can relate to you guys than us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? We are small, we're small. I know the bigness of being a professional athlete in the black community, right? Mm-hmm. Because sports to us as a community has always been a way out. We don't look at it as just playing a game.
Yeah.
We look at it as a fight for equality. We look at it as getting out of poverty. We look at it as changing our neighborhoods and captivating our culture and changing things. Mm-hmm. Like sports for us is not just dribbling and shooting. That's why LeBron, I'll never shut up. How can we shut up? Like we can't. We literally can't shut up about these things because these are the absolute things that have impacted us. These are the things you telling us to be quiet about are the reason we wanted to make it here.
Right.
So we could have an impact and be able to say those things. But the bottom line is, man, when it's guys like yourselves who people can feel and touch and relate to and that are going through things, that's more real. That's authentic, right? Mm-hmm. The reason I am like I am on ESPN is because I'm one of y'all.
Yeah.
Like I remove the professional athlete and the dude that played in the league and he on TV and he hollering and fussing with Stephen A. and Matt. Remove that. I come from the same things y'all come from. I dealt with the same things y'all dealt with. I never want to be above that. And I think that's what has resonated with people about my television career. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to be better than you because I'm at ESPN and I'm making money and I'm not that's my goal is for you to do that. Yeah. My goal is for the next generation, the brother that I can pull up. Like the crab in the barrel gotta go, bro. Like it's gotta go. It should be it should be a space for Dear Fathers podcast. It should be a space for I Am Athlete. It should be a space for All the Smoke. And you know what all three of them should do? They should support each other.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a competition. It should be all of us telling stories. So that's what y'all doing, man. That's why people relate.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And I agree with you 100%. I think it's space for all of this because it could never be too many platforms for black men being vulnerable, right? It was already so much of a rarity in the past. There can never be too much of it now, man. So definitely, man. And I just want to
to that point, I just want to interject one time. To your point, man, when you talk about platforms, we come from a history of when we create platforms, they kill us. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Martin created a platform for change. They killed him. Mm-hmm. Malcolm created a platform for change. They killed him. Mm-hmm. Medgar Evers, they killed him. Yeah. Right? Marcus Garvey, ostracized, killed him. Mm-hmm. Right? So my publicist is a white lady that grew up in Virginia that went to the University of Alabama, and we are family. Mm-hmm. You know why? Because of authenticity. Yeah. Because Ashley is willing to say, I don't understand that. That's not my experience. Right. And I was willing to say, I don't understand that. That's not my experience. So it's not just about black men. It's about our place in society. It's about not being snuffed out from telling these stories that are hard to tell sometimes. Like, you guys dealing with fatherhood. Our fathers were, like I said, we came from slavery. We came from Jim Crow. We came from Vietnam. We came from World War. Like, you got to understand, bro, like this, there has been an idea to remove these voices. Yep.
Mhm.
And when you're doing this podcast, when you're talking to guys like myself or anybody, it's so valuable. It's so much more than just, we got a dope guest on today and we going
Right.
so much more valuable than that, man. So it's always going to be a space, and it always needs to be a space for you guys to do what you're doing.
Absolutely. And that's what our focus is, man. We're gonna keep pushing this, keep growing this platform, keep telling these stories and really changing the narrative about fatherhood, about black fathers in general. And hopefully, with every time we get out here and we speak, if we inspire one brother, and we feel like we doing the work in the community. So that's
Sure.
what's important, man. So one of the things we like to do with every guest that we have on though is, have them like write a hypothetical letter to their father, right? So if you could write a letter to your pops, starting with "Dear Father," what would
Mhm.
you say?
Dear Father, I learned a lot in your absence as much as I learned in your presence. I learned to be a protector. I learned to deal with women because I was around them. Um, and I learned grace and forgiveness. I also learned that you don't have to lose to gain. And what I mean is, you can have it all based on your own terms. And I think I learned that I didn't have to depend on you to know what a family dynamic was, but I also learned what I didn't want a family dynamic to be. Um, and then I also learned, pops, that when I did move with you in high school, what I missed. I learned what I needed. I learned that the world was unforgiving. I learned that you didn't have the opportunities that I had, which probably the way you raised me didn't manifest until later in my life. Um, and I love you. I forgive you for the things that I felt like were done wrong. And I'm so grateful of your relationship with your grandson. I'm so grateful that you decided to not cut off your education about being a black father, but to continue to learn. And I'm so grateful that last week when I came by, you working on my 64 Impala. um, and thank you. And it will always be you, my father, and I'm your son. It will never be you were not there for a portion of my life, so we don't have a relationship. You're my father. I'm your son. Who I am is a lot of who you are. And I just tried to make those things that weren't as good better.
That's deep, man. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's really powerful that you could even have that, those words with your father, man. And
Yeah, man.
I'm hoping that when he gets a chance to hear this, he loves hearing that from you too.
No doubt.
Um, So, kind of getting us to wrap this thing up, man. We know you're a busy man. You growing every day. What's next for Marcus Spears, man? And how can the people follow you on social?
Yeah, man. So I'm M Spears 96 on Twitter. I'm M Spear with no S 96 on Instagram. What's next for me? Oh, dude. A bunch of volleyball tournaments, a bunch of basketball and baseball tournaments. I think from a career standpoint, man, I'm really getting into voiceovers. I'm really starting to try to learn how to create content that will be disruptive. Um, and I'm hoping, you know, I, it's funny. I was watching Rick Ross this morning. It was just an old clip from him on the Breakfast Club talk about what his team should be, how his team should be thriving because of his success.
Mm.
I want generations, whatever it is. I want generations of young people, not just black young men, but them overall because they have the experience that I have. But I want young people to realize your potential is only that. what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So that is the message that I want to be the next phase of not only my work in a public forum, but my work in a private forum. I've become, the feeling has always been there, but now I've finally activated and put into action the things that I want to see change. I have to be a part of them in my community. It can't be no longer get on TV and say this need to change. I got to be a part of it. And one thing I would challenge people to do, and I'm doing it. I'm not, bro. I hate having to do this, but I tell people because I want other people to do it. I have started something, being just a private giver. Mm-hmm. I tell my publicist, find me 2 families that need something, and let's send it to them anonymously. And I don't want lights or water to be a decision. Yeah. That's the next phase of who I am.
Bro, you need to start a foundation and call it. I mean, you probably already have one, but lights and water needs to be somewhere in the midst of what
Trust
you do,
me,
bro.
It's hard, it's a lot of things in motion when it comes to that, man. But more importantly, like you said, man, just we benefit so much when we want to see other people benefit. Yeah. And I'm just trying to get that message across to people, man. You don't have to be hoarders of wealth. You don't have to keep all of your information and the things that you learned along your journey to yourself. Yeah. Because I think in our community, we created this idea that if we give away our knowledge and our finances and our time, we no longer have it. Yeah. Right? And we got to change that thought. We got to, we especially in our community, we got to change the idea of if I'm supporting, if I'm giving, we always, I'm giving of myself. I'm pouring into you. But that doesn't mean I'm losing anything. You know what I'm saying? And I think we got to be what you guys are doing. We got to be free givers of information, of our time, and if possible, our finances to change people's current situation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. And I mean, this is just conversation, like you said. To me, it's built a brotherhood, in this triangle of conversation and things that we're talking about, the gems that you drop. And I feel like we should, potentially in the near future collaborate outside of just this podcast, man, because we have a nonprofit called Fearless Fathers where we provide resources to families. So whether we, collaborate with you or match, the amount that you kind of, put into this, let's make something like that happen, man.
Done deal, man.
Yeah, would love it, man. And I didn't even know you lived in Virginia. I actually just moved to Virginia from LA about 3 months ago with my family. So we're in the Hampton Roads area right now, man. So if you ever have anything going on out here,
northern, I think 20 minutes out of DC, I think. But dude, that's
okay. Yeah,
we're gonna link.
My in-laws is up in Northern Virginia, man. So definitely link. Would love to support anything you got going on, brother. I'm just, like I said, we were fans before you came on, but now I feel like I got to know you better as a man, and I'm just super excited about continuing to connect and build with you, and anything we could do together, our platform and what you have going on, man. Would love to do it.
Bet, man. Bet. I'm for it. I'm with it, and the collaboration is what really shifts anything. You know what I mean? So y'all ideas, my ideas, and let's do it. I'm with it.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Let's make something happen, man. Again, we appreciate you, man. I'm actually over here in Dallas, your old stomping ground.
Yeah, the D-Town. Yeah. What's up, family? This is Marcus Spears, aka the Big Swagoo, and you are rocking with the Dear Fathers podcast. We just vibed out. Y'all check us out. This has been crazy good talk. Peace. Swagoo.
Thank y'all for listening to another impactful conversation on the Dear Fathers podcast. It's your host, James Meeks.
And your co-host, Jesse Alex. But before we get out of here, make sure you subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, and we'll catch y'all next time. Salute.
My own CD cover. I'm so focused, ass Steven Glover. Still up and coming, but for sure coming. Went out on a limb like I broke something. Watch how he recover.